Hi, welcome back to another deep dive. This week we're talking AI predictive analytics. I'm Andrew. This is my co-founder Olivia. How you doing today?
Hey, good. We've got a good topic to cover off today, especially for those people out there that want to know a little bit more than what we covered in hot versus hype. So we'll really
Digging a
dive
bit.
into some of the technical details. Yeah.
Totally. Let's start off with something. Predictive analytics.
Mm-hmm.
I think AI can predict a surge in flight bookings around a holiday time.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be based on historical booking patterns, weather, social trends, those sorts of things. And I want to bring in prescriptive analytics. AI can then recommend specific pricing strategies, adjusting the ticket prices based upon, or dynamically based upon demand, or
Yep.
adjusting staffing based upon holidays. So that's going to be where I start. The difference between predictive and prescriptive. I also think that predictive analytics is a foundation for your prescriptive analytics, and AI has an immense role in both to play. And I really think that, yeah, I think it's a great way to look at it. Pulling it apart, predictive analytics is really forecasting future trends or outcomes based upon what is likely to happen. And in my mind,
Based on
prescriptive
the
analytics,
past. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and prescriptive analytics is what should we do about it? We kind of
Mhm.
going to guess what's going to happen. Let's recommend some sort of actions based upon that. So, predictive, traditional machine learning methods work, classification, regression, apologies, and prescriptive, optimization, reinforcement learning, those sorts of things. So, I'll predict a customer churn, but I'll suggest retention techniques to keep those customers. Outputs of predictive analytics is what probabilities, trends, forecasts, and prescriptive is all about recommended actions, decision pathways. I think it's difficult to talk about them independently, or I mean, I guess I could, but I'd much rather talk about them coupled together because I think they really build to an incredible solution that can help your business.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I just think maybe looking at it from a mechanism point of view versus a way to filter up the data to make it available.
Mhm.
So, definitely having something like predictive to sit as a precursor to doing prescriptive makes sense because you're looking at the past to determine what could be in the future, and prescriptive is setting a bunch of actions around that, right?
Hmm.
So, if you look at those from a data perspective, it makes sense as building blocks. And then if you look at AI facilitating getting to those pieces faster, then absolutely that's something that filters in. But what about using AI for reasoning to determine what's the best way to string together what's needed to come out with, those outcomes? And that's something that is really interesting to look into the future about to move beyond the older paradigms of how we're coming up with these different data frameworks.
Totally. I was going to ask, would you trust a prescription based on a prediction? Um, you know, how do you feel about AI now? I've seen some stuff where people are only trust their LLM
Good
52%
question.
of the time. Um,
Well,
would
we
you?
all know LLMs or large language models hallucinate. So, I think they're very good at predicting language, and that's where sometimes AI just gets thrown around as a general term. Specifically, what type of AI are you talking about?
Yeah.
Um, and what branch of that, if we're looking at a generalist kind of
A
uh,
general AI or
definition,
narrow AI? Look,
or a weak AI or a strong AI, depending
well,
on who's setting the definition. Yeah.
yeah, correct. Look, I'm weak, narrow. I'm a strong believer in these vertical solutions that can deliver exceptionally good outcomes for highly focused training and models. I don't want, if you don't overfit and you don't update the models, that's a different issue. But general AI or strong AI at the moment is not so good at some of those specialist techniques. They're great for LLM, or they're great for use for an agent that can then, you know, pass off to a narrow AI or weak AI.
Yeah, and that's the agent side of things is interesting. Everyone's talking about having many agents as being able to um, as being able to be like an army of microservices, for the lack of a better term, to be able to output one certain thing that they're kind of primed for. So I hear you on that. I hear that that's definitely something that's being talked about, that's out there. I think getting back to the predictive analytics side of things, what is it in
Back to
your
the
view? From a definition point of view, like for something to be deemed AI, it's got a capability of learning about it. It's got a capability of reasoning, problem solving, NLP or natural language processing, and perception of that to be able to come up with an answer that gets thrown at it. So, knowing those mechanisms around something like the more traditional analytics, it is the basis of something that could be really beneficial to enterprise.
Totally. Look, I think the predictive analytics, or the AI-driven predictive analytics, has been like one of the keystone foundations of the trust and the market building for AI. If we weren't doing simple linear regressions or simple predictions based on AI and data, there wouldn't have been the investment, wouldn't have been the market growth, and wouldn't have been the focus to give us these LLMs and give us DeepSeek and anything else that's popping up in the marketplace. By the time you get to listen to this, there could be a whole new.
I'm sure it will have already shifted by the time we get to the end of the deep dive of the episode. And I think that is interesting that you're talking about more of a generative AI, and because that's what people from a consumer perspective are used to dealing with, and seeing some challenges when they start to go into the enterprise with this. I mean, it's not something that you can point at a big query table with 5 years worth of data in it and say, answer questions immediately.
Do you mean big space query or big query? One word.
Big query, one word.
Right.
So, you're hoping it's not doing a big query in the background, but, there's a certain level of aggregation to make it useful. There's a certain level of handoff that needs to be orchestrated still in that kind of realm. So if you're doing, wonderful kind of predictive analytics, and you're using machine learning to do it, or a range of different AI branches, if you like, to be able to come up with that output, making that available to something that is a more generalist interaction, such as via a large language model, you're probably going to be handing that off into a real-time function call anyway. So it's fascinating to see, as all of these things start to converge, indexing versus real time, and all of the challenges that the enterprise really have beyond just going and looking at someone's Confluence and being able to answer questions about a definition or an acronym within an organization.
That's nice for discoverability, and I see it often as a new way to search and find, but in the realm of predictive and even prescriptive analytics, I'm a strong believer that predictive is foundational in everything.
100%.
So there's a race on right now to build AI, to be the next unicorn in the AI space, I guess. $6 million to train it, or billions to train it, perhaps. What do you think are the key components? Is predictive analytics a key component of something that DeepSeek should be looking at, or the next ChatGPT, or even the next big brand? Is that something that you should have in your arsenal as a startup today, or even corporate life today?
I mean, that's a good question, like all your good questions you've got today. I mean, of course, as an enterprise, you want to have that in your arsenal because it helps you navigate what may come. And it's all about being able to respond to future needs. So that's always helpful around that. But as far as, predictive analytics goes, is part of the large language model that you're talking the billions of dollars to train. I mean, it's essentially predicting the next word and the next association, right? Does that even fall underneath the realm of predictive?
Language is hard, and even supporting multiple languages. So I get that, and having these different models for sure. Look, I think strategically for a company, finance, healthcare, logistics, there's so many great use cases for predictive AI-driven predictive analytics, right? Even in a national context, right? So right now we have nation states looking at AI as well. So I think, there's a whole bunch of things to consider in cybersecurity, public health forecasting.
Do you see this sitting under generative AI though? Is that when you're talking about these bigger initiatives, are you saying it's predictive analytics sitting within the realm of generative AI, whether or not that be the mechanism to market or actually generating it?
I think generative AI is part of it. Look, I think to become a real growing concern in the AI space, you need predictive analytics, you need prescriptive analytics, generative AI, sure, NLP, natural language processing, computer vision, reinforcement learning, and absolutely generative AI. So I think it all comes together as a whole bunch of solutions that you need, and it's potentially.
I like that.
Yeah, it's potentially a flaw to only choose one or maybe two. Just having generative AI LLM interface into your predictive analytics, it's a nice step forward, but that's going to be possibly only a gimmick, right? You want to be able to have multimodal AI using NLP, using computer vision to really, really dive into an AI solution. And predictive analytics is an absolute cornerstone of it all. So I think you can't have
one without the other.
You can't have a complete AI solution without multiple AI facets, I guess.
And I think anything that you build, I mean, every organization, every set of needs is different. So you may not need all of them. In some instances, you may only need a subset. And in some instances, it's an increment towards fitting a better solution in general.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's three misconceptions in this space. One, that AI is a magic wand or a silver bullet. Absolutely not. AI will not deliver perfect predictions out of the box, right? It's only as good as the data you've got, and you need to tune it. You need domain expertise. And
even with the best data in the world, it's just predicting off the past. So if some event comes up that's unforeseen and hasn't been a pattern in the past, it's not like it's going to magically predict it. There'll be mechanisms in place to be able to help generate that, and that's when we start talking more prescriptive as well.
Totally, and that's slides right into my number 2 misconception. More data does not automatically mean better predictions, right? Data quality, biased, incomplete data, dirty data,
and trust.
Trust.
I mean, I know we haven't really touched on that, but trust is a big one that it can be the elephant in the room for today's discussion.
Yes. Trust is a difficult thing to build and an easy thing to lose, right? In your data, if your data is wrong once, rebuilding that user trust is very hard. And I was going to say the last thing is you can't replace human intuition in a lot of cases. You can improve the data points to help a human make a decision, but as of right this very moment, human intuition is a good thing for you to use in conjunction with it. Don't blindly believe your AI. Make sure that the model is not overfitted. You need to keep an eye out to make sure it's not being influenced or biased and things like that. So you still need to keep your eyes open and not blindly trust it. And you'll see people that blindly trust their LLMs and end up with some garbage. So it's a thing. I think there's a certain amount of hype factor there that you need to be aware of and keep working.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, it comes down to what you can actually share with some of the commercially available models that aren't set up for enterprise trust and security.
Totally. That brings me to another thought. Like, you're out there implementing AI, whether it be a simple narrow AI, vertically in, say, finance, with financial crimes or whatever, anti-money laundering, through to, e-commerce and things like that. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced or your team's faced as well, perhaps, when trying to implement AI in general, but I guess predictive analytics, and let's try and keep it to the topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's twofold. With anything that's new and evolving, obviously there's very little documentation that are out there or precedents. So for an enterprise, you need to have at least role-based access control.
That's
You need
difficult.
to be able to have something that cascades down and not too much to manage. You want to be able to manage what you do have from an infrastructure and a data asset point of view with policy as code. You want everything to be access controlled as code as much as possible so that you can maintain.
I love these ML ops or DevOps terminologies becoming part of a data engineer's toolkit.
Which it should be. I mean, it just, as a data engineer or a data specialist, the last thing you want to do is have your fingerprints on someone else's train wreck, right? So you don't want to have access to production data. You don't want to have access to private and personal data. Whatever you can do to automate and facilitate that away from someone and to be looking at patterns, essentially. And software patterns rather than actual data itself. You shouldn't have to go into the data itself. There should be enough mechanism around it that you can derive and profile without actually having to go and manually look at things, which traditionally a lot of people did.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the challenge. On the predictive side, the other part of the challenge is, a lot of organizations still don't have their maturity levels to the right level yet of where they want to get to. And a lot of the big companies are starting to leapfrog, trying to do things properly through a data maturity model and start to connect to all kinds of different things directly into, AI agents, which will help move the maturity forward, but, may not replace the requirement of actually looking at things through the lens of that progression to understand and trust and predict things based off the past.
Totally. AI agents, another topic, but I think they're just a new UI.
Just another UI.
Another UI, exactly. Look, we've touched on it, but I want to get your thoughts on governance around data and around and how that leads into AI and your predictions. We've talked about RBAC, and I guess that's there. We've talked a little bit about bias, but what are your thoughts about the role of governance and the importance of it? I'm particularly concerned as well. Well, our customers are concerned about things like the EU AI Act that are coming in. We've got the new administration in the United States putting up a lot of cash to grow the AI space. So I think, we've got to have two major approaches in the Western world that we need to look at. And what are your thoughts around that?
Big question. I'm going to stick to enterprise because I'm not going to tackle the consumer world. It's not really my thing. But as far as enterprise is concerned with data, to get predictions, to look at trends, to be able to start to move towards actions on things, you only need aggregated data. So as far as that's concerned, there's really no excuse really to not have some form of governance that automates away a lot of it. The gold star of being able to manage that with a small team, you want to do less with more with less, rather. You want to have a small team to be able to do more. You really need everything to be meta-driven and to start to govern the metadata around the data to help govern the data. And that's really where AI can help a lot once you start to approach data within the enterprise and aggregating that data in the enterprise in a way that is more dynamic, real time, and data and metadata driven. You can start to automate privacy obfuscation. You can put things into the appropriate regions before that kind of happens. And ultimately, 2025, there's really no excuse to be putting data out there that breaches what's coming up with the regulatory environments.
Totally. I think frameworks, metadata, and methodologies are certainly ways to scale techniques, right? And
it's Yeah, it is probably worth mentioning that obviously it's down to each individual enterprise what their definitions are from a regulatory perspective that roll up into the standards, and it's very diverse what is out there from that point of view.
Totally. Yeah, you touched on trends, so let's talk about what you think, or what we think, because I'm going to have some opinions too. What we think the trends are for predictive AI, predictive analytics in 3 to 5 years. Well, where do you think it's going to be, or what do you think the issues are going to be? Um, Obviously through governance and legislation, explainable AI is going to be a big one, because that's what things like the EU AI Act is all about. Making sure that we can explain our AI, how it impacts people, and things like that. And that really gets into ethical and responsible AI. We were in a period in the US where responsible AI teams are not necessarily focused right now, but I think as like you said, some enterprises that are targeting other markets will need to continue that trend, right? So I think those are ethical, responsible, and explainable AI is going to be a trend, and maintain that, right? I think real time will continue to grow and always grow. I think edge AI is a term to watch out for. Edge AI, when you can run a model on your devices, we've had it for a little while,
A long
but they're
time.
going to get better. Yeah. You and I have worked on the medical industry where we're deploying edge models down to lab gear.
Lab equipment. Yeah, a long time
Exactly.
ago. Yeah.
Exactly. But this is going to get bigger as the capability of our devices and the capability of these models continue to grow. We're
As it
going to
becomes more commoditized too. Yeah.
correct. And you know what's going to bring it all together? It's going to be integration with Gen AI. Things there's going to be a fusion of predictive and generative AI, and that's going to be a huge trend in the next, between now and 3 years, is going to be a huge trend, right?
Look, I'd agree with you on that. I think, we're at the infancy from a true generative AI perspective. We've been talking about it in sci-fi movies since the dawn of time. Self-guiding kind of AI is sentient. There's been some interesting kind of controversies around that more recently, but definitely moving into the next 5 or so years, there's a trajectory to speed up really rapidly around this. There's going to bring up a lot of gray kind of area for individuals, for privacy, for publishers. It's going to have some unintended consequences, which may be reaching into more of the traditional ad serving model deficiencies that may be out there, and that may shift from controlled media to social media to some of the other shifts that are out there, if we're not crediting where we get our information from. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of hot topics that are around that on the consumer end, and on the enterprise world, I think, just trying to get access to the brain trust internally in each enterprise and connecting that to pre-configured, pre-trained things, and get some smarts out of it is going to continue. And I say continue because that's been the holy grail for a while. We're getting closer to being able to do that in the enterprise.
Totally. Look, I'm firmly in the space of this all being hot right now. I love my workflows being augmented by AI. I love the productivity gains it gives me. Sometimes I'll have a writer's block, right? And an LLM can help me think of some points, or code completion engines. So AI can help me code maybe a little bit faster. Would I rely upon them solely? Absolutely not. Human intuition and human interaction is absolutely required. In an enterprise, when I give that feedback to my AI that it wasn't quite right, I expect it to be adaptable, and I expect it to take that on board. So the reinforcement learning comes into it.
We're not far away from, even in pipelines, being able to do, for example, data quality management and profiling, and handing that off to determine, as we're flowing data in, if it's going to be appropriate to the rest of the data sync that's in there, without having to manually define rules. I mean, there's a lot of rule-oriented kind of workflows that can be disrupted nicely by this. So beyond using metadata and dynamically driven kind of message-oriented architectures, now we can put some reasoning in that, which will be cool to see.
Totally. Look, I think AI has a huge future in repeatable rules-based.
Yeah. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit, right?
Totally. And that's where it's come from, right? And that's where generative AI is a lot more exciting, right? So in spaces where we're not currently applying it, I think we should be looking more. And data pipelines are great. The whole medallion architecture, the data meshes, those sorts of things. I think they're really, really ready for AI disruption. And I think they'll be really amazing to see the augmented productivity gains we could gain out of that. Again, the standard rules apply. Keep an eye on your models, look for data drift, keep them secure, look for taints coming into your data and things like that. So you need to keep an eye on it. But yeah, I think it's exciting.
It's an exciting period, right? I mean, it's the next frontier. It was the whole reason many moons ago we got into this stuff as professionals that had an interest in it. So it's exciting to see it move into more of a productive realm, and watching the consumer end of it kind of go off like wildfire has been entertaining too. So, it's definitely got legs. It's what we thought in our hot versus hype earlier this week, that it's definitely hot. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we drop off today?
I might just wrap it up. We're here to talk about AI predictive analytics. I brought up prescriptive. We've covered Gen AI. We've covered governance,
the definitions,
all sorts of weird stuff. But you know what? AI is a common thread that enhances both predictive and prescriptive analytics, right? From improving the accuracy of predictions to making maybe intelligent automated decisions based on those predictions, right? Absolutely hot. Absolutely get into it. And I think it's essential cornerstone of AI technology.
And I have to agree with you there. Obviously, other people will have many opinions that are around this. The edges of the frameworks that we're touching on are shifting and sliding on a daily basis. I think there's a lot of interesting things on those edges to be debated and discussed with people. But yeah, it's definitely something moving into the future that we're going to see and reap a lot of benefit from.
Perfect. Thanks, Olivia, for your time. I look forward to our next chat. Stay tuned for our next Hot or Hype and also our next deep dive. We have special guests. We have some cool topics. Write in, let us know. And see you all next time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.